Let's talk a little American Reunion. Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today we are talking about American Reunion, the final installment in the original American Pie franchise. This movie was directed by Hayden Schlossberg and John Hurwitz. And basically, as you can just tell from the plot, this movie focuses on the reunion of the class of 1999. They all get back together, and while some things have definitely, changed for this group, many things have not as well. So that's pretty much primarily the plot of this movie. So as usual, the movie opens up with a scene, featuring Jim. It starts off with some R. Kelly music playing, and you hear like a bed creaking, so you think it's Jim and Michelle, going at it. But when we get to, actually see the characters, you see Michelle. Obviously they've been married now for a little while, and they have a kid, and she is rocking the kid, up and down on the bed, trying to get him to go to sleep. So that that was kind of funny, just kind of showing the age, where these characters are at. It's definitely been a little while since the last time we've seen them in American Wedding. And pretty much, she finally she goes to put the kid to bed, says she's going to go take a bath. And Jim's like, oh, yeah, he's on the computer. And as soon as she goes, locks like the bathroom door or whatever, Jim makes sure that, she's not coming out or anything. He sets up like a mirror, and then he jumps online to go watch some porn. So, like I said in the beginning, while some things have changed, they've gotten a little bit older, there's many things that have still remained the same. So, Jim starts going at it. And, he's getting really into it, and then all of a sudden his kid walks into the room, and, Jim freaks out. He accidentally closes the computer on himself, and I was just like, ooh, like that, you just cringe. And then he ends up throwing his sock onto his kid's head, so he's freaking out. He goes into the bathroom because he's bleeding, and we end up finding Michelle. She's in the bathroom, and she's using the shower head on herself, so that's kind of that kicks off the movie. So, hilarious scene to start off. And as you can see, some things with Jim and Michelle, their love life is definitely a little off as of this moment. So after this opening, from there, we get, start getting like introduced to some of the other characters, see what they've been up to. And one of the things that I really liked about this movie, and I liked that, in my previous review for American Wedding, that wasn't the final installment because not everyone was in it. You do have that here, and so we get to see, Oz, and his is pretty funny. He's like a sports newscaster now, and they show a little segment of him talking with like Ocho Cinco, and he has some like really cringeworthy lines, but it's hilarious. And then he's dating like this like, hot like supermodel girl, but she's kind of like a bitch. And so that's what's going on with him. Kevin, I think he's just like a kind of stay-at-home like husband, because they show him and he's like cooking from home when his like wife's there. And then Jim, he does like an IT like kind of like tech job or whatever. And the funniest one is probably Stifler. We get reintroduced to him, and he's working at this like firm now. He's walking through the office, he's slapping like ladies like butts, and he tells like this old guy that he's like fired, like almost gives him like a heart attack. And then we end up finding out that the guy that he's working for now is like a super dick. His name's like Mr. Duraswamy, I believe, something along those lines. And he goes into his office and like doesn't realize that the guy's about to come in, but he's like looking at the guy's wife, like a picture that he has, and he's like, oh yes, and he takes the picture and puts it down on him, and then he ends up walking in and scares the shit out of him. But that was a really funny introduction to Stifler, and we don't get to see in the beginning, at least that part, Finch. But when the guys all end up going to meet up at like a bar like later on, he ends up showing up on this motorcycle and kind of has that mysterious what have you been up to like the past 13 years or whatever, and you kind of find out more about that later on. But the guys think that's just typical Finch doing crazy Finch stuff. A big focus of this film too, so the big thing is definitely, just getting this whole cast back together, celebrating their reunion, which I believe it's like their 13th reunion, because they didn't get this movie out in time to celebrate the 10th anniversary, which is kind of funny, and they poke fun at that in the movie, which I thought, was nice. But the big focus of this film, besides that, is just, kind of Jim and Michelle. Like I mentioned, they things are kind of like awkward. Since they've been married, they have a kid now. They're in that point when their relationship where their love life is kind of taking a back seat to everything. And they're just really trying, they're, a little worried. They're trying to, make sure that they can make that a focus again. So that's like kind of the subplot of the film as well. When these guys are all, going back to like Great Falls too, like Jim and Michelle, they end up going to, to his parents' house and end up finding out that the mom was dead. So evidently she just didn't want to come back for this movie. So they wrote her off, and then they end up going into the house, but Jim's kind of bringing stuff in. He ends up he sees this this girl next door, and ends up finding out that is actually the girl that he used to babysit when, she was a little bit younger, and now she's like turning 18, and she wants him to come to like her 18th birthday party that's going to be on the lake, I believe like the following night. So Jim's kind of gets all flustered with that, which is like funny. One of the funniest scenes in the film is definitely the whole sequence. So everyone ends up, well, at least a good amount of people end up going to the lake like the following day. And, you have all the guys there, and then you have like Michelle, a couple other people, they're all at like the lake or whatever, and they're just they're hanging out. And when they're sitting there, the boyfriend of Kara, who I just mentioned, he ends up going around, he starts like stealing all these girls like tops or whatever and taking them and running around the beach. And so one of them, he ends up stealing Oz's girlfriend's, tops. So they all end up like, running after him to get him back. And they end up getting to the water, and the guy gets on like his jet skis with like his couple friends, and basically they end up splashing, like our main cast of characters. And, they get kind of pissed off, and they're talking about, oh, we got to get him back. So I believe it's like Stifler, he ends up like knowing where they're like headed or something like that. And they end up going to this area of like the lake, and Stifler, he ends up shitting in their cooler. And then he also ends up tying like a rope to like all their jet skis, and ends up driving off and just completely like breaks all the jet skis, which catches the guys off hands because they all have different ideas of what Stifler was about to do. But yeah, that was definitely probably one of the funniest moments in the movie. Stifler just being a dick like he always is. One of the other like funnier moments like in the movie is, so they end up going to the falls like later that night, and Jim ends up running into Kara because she's having her birthday party like I mentioned, and she ends up having a lot to drink, obviously because it's her party, and ends up getting drunk and needs a ride home. So Jim ends up bringing her home, but on the way she starts flirting with him, and wants to like lose her virginity to him, and he's like, oh, like no, I can't do that. And basically they end up like crashing sort of or whatever, and at that point Jim calls like his friends because he needs his help, or their help, to try and get her back into her house. So the guys end up, they find her house, it's right next door to Jim's or whatever, and so they go to knock on the door, and Stifler's like, oh, like I got this like under control. And he ends up talking to like the father, and he's like, oh, like my friend's car broke down, and we were just wondering if we could use your phone because, we don't have any. And the father's just like, you mean to tell me none of you guys own a cell phone? And it just like, you just like look and you're like, yeah, that does kind of like make sense. Like how can none of you guys like have a phone on you? But then, so they're trying to sneak, Jim's trying to sneak Kara through the back door because she's topless. And it's super funny. The wife like ends up like loving Oz because she watched like a show that he was on, like Dancing with the Stars, something, or Dance Off, something like that. And she starts like dancing with him and like all this ridiculous stuff. So that whole like sequence is definitely probably another one of my favorite parts in the movie. And then I'd say another like, sequence is later on in the film, Stifler ends up having a party like he always does in these movies. And, he's gotten like shots and stuff like that. But when he comes out, he finds that someone like changed like the music because they said it's like not baby appropriate, because all these people, they're all older now. A lot of them have kids and stuff like that. So it's not, they've kind of grown up, and they're not doing like the same parties that they were back in like 1999 and stuff like that. And Stifler's like pissed. He's like, what the hell? So he ends up getting Jim's dad drunk, Eugene Levy. And he's definitely like, he's one of my like favorite characters in this film. He's always been solid throughout all the movies, But he has some really funny moments in this film. You know, he gets drunk and just starts doing all this crazy stuff, and he actually ends up hooking up with Stifler's mom like later on in the movie, which is really funny. And to end the movie, you know, kind of skipping a few things, but to end the movie, Stifler ends up hooking up with Finch's mom, which, you know, after all of these films with Finch hooking up with Stifler's mom, you know, I just thought that was kind of a funny turn of events. And, you know, the movie pretty much ends. They all end up going to the reunion, and everyone ends up, you know, talking to each other, dancing, having a good time. And I just thought that this is a really good way to wrap up the series. They do, at the very end, they do kind of leave it open for more. And, you know, I definitely wouldn't mind, like, seeing, like, another, like, movie. I don't know, like, where they would go at from here. But if they do, like, if this is, like, the last one, I think it's definitely a good way to end it because, you know, like I said, all the characters were brought back for this one. Even some of the smaller characters, you know, like Vicky, you know, she was a fairly decent, you know, character throughout like the series, but like she's brought back. Jessica's brought back. The Shermanator, the MILF guys. So like even like these smaller characters, and they all kind of get their own like little moments, which is really cool. So that was definitely one of my favorite things about this movie, is just having everyone come back and, you know, ending this series right. The other thing that, you know, with this movie is that I think it's just crazy how all of, especially like the main characters, you know, like Stifler, Finch, Oz, Jim, stuff like that, how easy they were able to jump back into these characters, you know, after being, you know, 13 years or whatever like that since they've last, like, you know, played them. And, you know, you can just tell the chemistry's there, the friendship and everything. And really at the end of it, you know, one of the main themes throughout like the American Pie franchise is definitely that theme of friendship, that bond. And, you know, you can definitely see that here. So that was something that I really liked as well. The comedy is definitely on point. This is definitely one of, I would say, it's really tough because I would say this is probably my third favorite, but it's close. Like, I really, really enjoyed this. I actually got to see it in theaters with my brother. So that was cool because it was like his like first American Pie film. But yeah, it was just a really enjoyable time. You know, sometimes with these films that are like done like 10 years later, these sequels, they don't always work out well. But I thought that they did a really good job with this. You can tell that they, you know, they cared about the characters and brought them back the right way. So as far as a rating goes, I think I would give this like a solid like 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I just watched it, you know, not too long ago, and I've seen it several times, you know, since it's come out. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. As far as rating the series, I would say American Pie 2, American Pie 1, which those are like really close. Same thing actually with like Reunion, even though it's number 3, there's like not a lot of separation between those. And then American Wedding's probably like my least favorite. But yeah, let me know. I'm curious to see what you guys, you know, think of American Reunion. Also, what is your ratings of the original 4 American Pie films? So definitely let me know down below in the comments. And as always, guys, please make sure to hit that bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos, and subscribe so that way, you know, you get notifications as well. Make sure to hit that thumbs up because that really helps with YouTube's algorithm. It's really kind of a pain, and where I'm a smaller channel, anything you guys can do with that really helps. So thanks guys again for checking this out, and as always, make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.